Alright, as I said, what we're going to do is we're going to review some problems in Lesson 6. So be sure you have Lesson 6 problem set filled in. Lesson 6 problem set. So this is basically going to function as a review of some basic skills for those of you that I have noticed will need this. So problem number 1 says 5 1/3 times 2 1/3. The first thing I would do anytime you're dealing with mixed numbers, always in algebra, it's going to be easier to turn those mixed numbers into improper fractions. To do that, you multiply the denominator of this fraction times this whole number. So 5 times 3, and then add the 1 in the numerator. So 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. And then you keep the denominator as it is. So that's going to be 16/3. Okay? I'm going to do one step at a time. So I'm going to bring down that divided by. Then I've got 3 times 2. I'm multiplying the denominator of this fraction times the whole number, 3 times 2 plus 1, that gives me 7/3. Now, what we are doing is we're dividing a fraction. To divide a fraction, what you want to do is dividing a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So, to multiply by the reciprocal, you take the numerator and the denominator and you flip them. So, dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. I found the reciprocal of this fraction. Okay, so this now becomes multiplication. This first number stays. An easy way that you can remember this is keep, change, flip. KCF, not KFC. KCF. Keep, change, division to multiplication, and flip. So dividing a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. Here we can cross simplify these 3's or cross reduce these 3's. Then all I've got left is 16. These both become 1's. So 16 times 1 is 16. 1 times 7 is 7. Alright, so that is number 1. We're going to do 1 through 6 if we have time. So number 2 says 40 1/8 minus 21 1/4. Again, it's going to be easiest when you've got mixed numbers to turn those mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I'm going to say 40 times 8 gives me 320 plus 1 gives me 321/8. Multiply the denominator times the whole number, add the numerator. Minus 4 times 21 gives me 84 plus 1 gives me 85/4. Now, I'm adding and subtracting. Remember, when I'm adding and subtracting fractions, I have to find a common denominator. So the common denominator I'm going to use here is 8. Because 4 will go evenly into 8, 8 is my common denominator. So I say 8's the common denominator. I need to know what I have to do to get from 4 to 8. Well, to get from 4 to 8, I multiply by 2. So 4 times 2 gives me 8. I need to multiply 85 by 2, which gives me 170. So I have 321/8 minus 170/8. If I subtract that, I get 151/8. Or if you turn that into a mixed number, it would be 18 7/8. Now there are different ways to do that. Some of you like to work with these as mixed numbers and subtract here and find a common denominator. I always am going to turn them into improper fractions because I think that is much easier. So let's do it again. I got 5 2/3. You're probably going to want to write small on this. Plus 2 5/6 plus negative 2 1/6. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn all of these into improper fractions. 3 times 5 gives me... What was that? Oh, thanks. I just wrote the problem down. 3 times 5 gives me 15, plus 2 is 17/3, plus 6 times 2 gives me 12, plus 5 gives me 17/6, plus... What I'm going to do, this is plus a negative. I'm going to leave it as plus a negative. Plus negative 6 times 2 gives me 12, plus 1 gives me 13/6. It's a negative 13/6. Now, what I notice is I'm adding and subtracting, so again what I need to do is find that common denominator. I've got a 3, a 6, and a 6. So I'm looking for the greatest common denominator with 3 and 6. Well, that's going to be a 6 because 3 will go evenly into 6. So, to get from 3 to 6, I multiply by 2. So I need to multiply that 17 by 2. That gives me 34. 34/6 plus 17/6 plus a negative 13/6. Right? 34 plus 17, if I add those, I get 51. 6, I've got addition, so I'm just going from the left to the right. 51 6 plus negative 13 6. Now here's where we use our addition chant. We go same signs, add and keep, different signs, subtract. These signs are different. This is a positive, this is a negative, so these signs are different, so we're going to subtract. 51 minus 13 is going to give me 38 sixths. 38 sixths, or we could simplify that. Let's don't box that in because that could be simplified. Both 38 and 6 can be divided by 2. If I divide 38 by 2, I get 19. So that could be 19 thirds. Because 6 divided by 2 is 3. 19 thirds or 6 1/3. I will accept 6 1/3, but I really prefer it as an improper fraction. I prefer it as 19 thirds. Alright, let's look at number 4. Number 4 says 2 1/3. 2 1/3 divided by 1 1/4 times 1 1/2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply. 3 times 1 gives me 3, plus 2 gives me 5 thirds, divided by, let's see, 1 times 4 is 4, plus 1 is 5 fourths, times, oh, I forgot to do that. 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3 halves. Again, I'm multiplying the denominator times the whole number, adding the numerator. Remember, dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. I had to go keep, change, flip. So keep, change division to multiplication, and then I flip, multiplying by the reciprocal. 4 fifths times 3 halves. Now again, you can cross simplify on all of these. This is going to be real simple because I can cross reduce. I can cross reduce with these two or with these two. I see 3 and 3 here. I can take a 3, I can divide a 3 out of both of them. Those both become 1s. Alright? I can divide a 5 here and a 5 here. 5 divided by 5 is again 1. And then all I've got left is 4 times 1, which is 4, over 1 times 2, which is 2. 4 over 2, which gives me 2. A positive 2. That cross-reduced all the way down to give me a positive 2. Alright, let's look at what we just did. We did 4, so let's do 5. Do I want to do 5? Yes, let's do 5. Alright, 5 says 0 and 74 hundredths divided by 2 hundredths times, no, not 2 hundredths, 2 tenths. Divided by 2 tenths times 3 tenths. Now what I notice, I have division and multiplication. Again, remember, G-E-M-A. With division and multiplication, they're on the same step, so we go from the left to the right. Okay, we don't do multiplication then division. We do division and multiplication from the left to the right. So the first thing I've got to do is I've got to divide 2 hundredths into 74 hundredths. So when I've got a decimal in my divisor here, I want to move it over 1, make it a whole number, move it over 1 in my dividend. Alright, now I have 2 into 7. 2 goes into 7 3 times. 3 times 2 gives me 6. Subtract there, that gives me 14. Now I want to know how many times will 2 go in 14. It'll go in 7 times. 7 times 2 gives me 14, so that went evenly. So my answer is 3 and 7 tenths. So that's my answer to this. So what I have now is 3 and 7 tenths times 0 and 3 tenths. Okay? I got an answer for this portion, and then I need to multiply that by this second factor right here. So I'm just dividing from the left, dividing and multiplying from the left, to the right. 3 and 7 tenths times 0 and 3 tenths. Okay? So let's multiply this out. Remember, let's multiply this out. I've got 7 times 3, which gives me 21. I carry my 2. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 11. Okay? So that's, I could go ahead and multiply that by 0, but that's not going to add any value. So now, what I need to do, I've got 1, 1, 1. But I've got a decimal here. I need to count off my decimal places in my factors. I've got 1 decimal place here, and I've got 1 decimal place here. So what I do, that's 2 total decimal places, so I'm going to move the decimal 2 places to the left. It starts right here, I move it 1, 2. That means my final answer is 1 and 11 hundredths. 1 and 11 hundredths. So I'm multiplying and dividing from the left to the right. Last one, let's do number 6. 5 and 4 tenths times 0 and 3 tenths divided by 0 and 4 tenths. So again, I have multiplication and division. I'm thinking about my order of operations. I don't have any grouping symbols. I don't have any exponents. I don't have that. I don't have that. So I just have multiplication and division. So I just go from the left to the right. So first I'm going to multiply. I've got 5 and 4 tenths times 0 and 3 tenths. I'm going to bring it down there so I can keep what's going on up here without getting too confused. Alright, 5 and 4 tenths times 0 and 3 tenths. 4 times 3 gives me 12. Carry the 1. 5 times 3 is 15. Add that 1. That gives me 16. Okay? So that's 162. But again, I need to count off my number of decimal places in my factor. So I've got 1 decimal place here and 1 decimal place here. I have a decimal that starts there. I need to move it over 1, 2 places to the left. So 5 and 4 tenths times 0 and 3 tenths gives me, my decimal would be right here in between the 1 and the 6. So that's 1 and 62 hundredths divided by 0 and 4 hundredths. 62. Ooh, I wrote a 4. Thank you. So 1 and 62 hundredths divided by 0 and 4 hundredths. So now I just need to divide that out. I've got 0 and 4 tenths. I said 4 hundredths. I meant 4 tenths. 0 and 4 tenths into 1 and 62 hundredths. So again, what I want to do, actually let's move this up a little bit so we have just a little bit more room. This can be a little bit longer. 0 and 4 tenths into 1 and 62 hundredths. So what I want to do is I want to move my decimal place over 1 here, move it over 1 here. If I have a decimal place in my divisor, I want to move it over to make this a whole number, and then move this over 1 in my dividend. So now I just want to see how many times 4 will go into 16. 4 will go into 16 4 times. 4 times 4 gives me 16. 16 minus 16 gives me 0. Bring down the 2. How many times will 4 go into 2? None. So I need to add a 0. Now, how many times will 4 go into 20? 5. 5 times 4 gives me 20. And I'm done. So that's 4 and 5 hundredths. So again, what I'm doing is I am just multiplying and dividing from the left to the right. Now, if you would like to put this sort of work on a scratch paper, but show me what, and attach it, but show me the steps that you're doing right here, I'm fine with that. But I need to see, notice on all of these, I showed my work and I showed my steps. Now, it may not be the greatest handwriting, but I showed my work. That's all we'll do for lesson 6.